Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our gathering tonight. We are continuing our discussion on healing. I never actually introduced myself. My name is Lynn Barrette. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, spiritual counselor in the Chicago area, now doing sessions online everywhere. I'm talking with you again this week about forgiveness and how we can do it and why we should do it. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently tonight. I'm going to do our check-in after I review what we talked about last week, just because I'm curious to hear, just so you can be thinking about it between now and then, I'm curious to hear how your forgiveness concept, your thought about forgiveness and your approach to forgiveness has changed since we talked about it last week. So maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but I'm definitely curious about hearing about that. So I'm going to go ahead and get my PowerPoint up here so we can get going. All right. I'm sure there's a faster way to do this. I just have not figured it out yet, but in the meantime, here we go. All right, so last week we talked about what forgiveness is not and what it is. I'm going to go over those a little bit, and tonight we're covering why we should forgive, which we talked briefly about last week, and how to do it. So last week we talked about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgive and forget. We weren't created to forget things. We go through experiences and learn, adapt, and move forward. And that's how we evolve. That's how our consciousness expands. That's how we heal and grow and are better able to express our potential. Forgiveness is not pretending like something never happened and start over or turning the other cheek. Forgiveness does not always lead to reconciliation. Sometimes we learn how somebody else or a situation might be. What is its essence? How is it showing up? How is somebody showing up? If somebody continues to behave inappropriately, then they're teaching us, that person is teaching us that, we have a choice to be around that behavior or not be around that behavior, but it's probably going to continue, and that's good information. And as a therapist, I'm always encouraging people to trust your clear self more than you trust other people. And when I say your clear self, I'm talking about that self that's above a 5 on the spiritual thermometer that we've talked about. I'm talking about that self that isn't agitated physically or emotionally, which are one and the same usually. But that clarity, when you feel peace, that's the you to trust. And forgiveness is not a lack of accountability and letting somebody else get by with what we did. We hold people accountable when we can, but I'm sure as a human being on this planet, you have come across situations where it's just not possible to hold somebody accountable for their behavior, but we tend to still want to. And that wanting to is part of our forgiveness process. So we want to move forward. We want to do our part and be accountable for our own behavior and actions and thoughts and feelings, and not bring another person or situation with us, not drag it around with us everywhere we go. What then is forgiveness? Forgiveness, as I define it, is the process of acceptance, compassion, and release. So acceptance is acknowledging the facts of the situation, the reality of what happened, the reality of what I did, the reality of what the other person did, the reality of the situation, and working with those facts and being able to accept the reality that something has happened and we can't change that it has happened, but we can look at the facts and learn what we need to learn, feel what we need to feel, and work through whatever we need to work through in order to move forward. And we have to be willing to deal with the reality of the situation and be honest with ourselves about what we brought to the table, be honest with ourselves about where we're coming from in our forgiveness process, as well as being able to understand the situation itself, which leads us to compassion. And compassion is once we've accepted the facts, being able to look at the next bigger picture, which is being able to see, okay, what was the context of the situation? Um, where might that person have been coming from? Were they just having a bad day? Were they stressed out because they're in a pandemic just like I am, and they behaved badly because of the stress that they're under? Or is this, just a behavior that this person is stuck in and can't get out of? What am I bringing to the table? Was I having a bad day and reacted in a certain way that led to a counteraction that now it's all a jumbled mess that needs a forgiveness process? We look at, with compassion and understanding for ourselves and for the other person, for the situation, but to look at it from all perspectives so that we can have balance and perspective when we're doing our forgiveness work. And then release. Releasing is the step where we choose acceptance and compassion as our reality that we're taking with us, instead of resentment and the emotional pain that can come with something that happened that needs a forgiveness process. Needs our forgiveness work. And it's a process, and it does take time. It takes time to forgive. And maybe we forgive, and then the same person or the same situation comes up again, and it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm feeling all agitated about it, and I thought I forgave, but I guess I didn't. But you did. Whenever we make an effort towards forgiveness, it is working. Even if it comes up again, then there's just something else for us to look at, to learn, to move forward, or it's a new layer of letting go. A lot of times in my work, I've seen the process of deeper and deeper healing. There's healing at a behavioral level for people where, okay, I need to, stop biting my fingernails. And so I'm going to work on the behavior around biting my fingernails so I don't do it anymore. And then maybe I'm successful about not biting my fingernails anymore. But then what comes up next is, well, maybe I start biting my fingernails again. And I think, well, I've done all this work to stop, and now it's just back again. What happened? Well, I did do the work. I did the physical memory work of not biting my fingernails, but there's something else in there for me to see. And that's the next layer of, emotional influence. What is going on with me emotionally around why I'm biting my fingernails? And then after that, it's when I can conquer my emotions, then I can look at any other mental processes that I'm holding on to that get in the way of that, releasing that behavior. And so any kind of process can go from, okay, I forgive this person, and now I'm not having to think about them all the time. But if I see them, I get triggered. Okay, well, that's the next layer of forgiveness to work with. So I work with that, and I get all the emotions out around forgiving that person. So maybe I'm not triggered so much by that person or situation. So that's another level of forgiveness. And then down below, there's the next one. And that is, okay, why am I still holding on to this forgiveness need? Why am I holding on to this person and the resentment around this person? Well, maybe that's when I have to look more deeply and say, okay, if I don't forgive this person, then that saves me from having to look at myself and my own behavior or my fears, or, then it's that even deeper level that goes into really more of our body storage. So it's always a process, and any forgiveness effort we make is never lost. It's never wasted. It just can feel like it's like, oh my gosh, here it is again. I didn't do anything the first time, but that's not true. So just want to make that clear too. That's really important for us to remember, because it can feel like a forever process. So we talked last week also about why we should forgive. There's the physical health benefits, reduces cortisol and stress in the body, which reduces inflammation, strengthens the immune system. So again, right now is a great time to be forgiving lots of people, to strengthen our immune systems. Lowers blood pressure by reducing anxiety and our anger reactions, that adrenaline that comes up when we get triggered emotionally. It reduces our emotional pain, and the re-traumatization of our experience. When we heal, it's kind of like the bruise we talked about last week, where our physical bodies have a bruise, and if we poke at that bruise, or if we keep bumping that bruise, it still hurts, right? But if we are gentle with the bruise, or maybe cushion it a little bit, it has that a little more room for that healing process. The same is true for our emotional bruises, so to speak. When we're not working with them, we're not taking care of that healing, then we can keep bumping up into it until we heal it. And part of that is, kind of skipping ahead a couple of bullet points here, part of that is that we are designed to heal. We are designed and wired to be at peace and to be free. So when that's not happening, our mind-body system works really hard to bring up and bring out whatever it is that is in our way. And that's why it can feel like, oh my gosh, I keep drawing the same situation into my world over and over again. Well, that's your mind-body system, your soul saying, let's get this healed so we don't have to keep bringing it up over and over again. We are wired absolutely to heal. And forgiveness frees up and increases our mental capacity, because when our mind-body system isn't tied up with storing and carrying around all of this emotional energy that unforgiveness traps inside of us, then that's taking away from our ability to think as clearly as we can think, our ability to use creatively as much of our brain, body system, soul as we possibly can. So that's another, of course, benefit to forgiveness. And learning, healing, and growing is always more important than bitterness, vengeance, anger, even when it feels satisfying sometimes. So, okay, that's kind of our recap from last week. So what does forgiveness mean to you, and how is that different from since we talked about forgiveness last week? How is your idea of forgiveness different? All right, so nobody has anything to say tonight. Quiet group. Okay, so we'll keep on going then. Feel free to add anything to the chat. All right, so did I do that? Yeah, I did that right. Okay. So last week, somebody asked about forgiving ourselves and how do we do that and what does that look like? And forgiving ourselves is the same process that we're going to talk about a few different approaches. There's lots of tools out online that you can find for forgiving, lots of different methods and all of that. I'm going to share with you my top three. And these are the same. Any forgiveness process is the same to forgive ourselves. We look at the situation. We try to understand where, if I'm forgiving myself, where was I coming from at the time? What was going on with me? And maybe it's that thing that I do and I do every time and I swear I would never do it again and I did it and I'm just so frustrated with myself. Okay, well, what do I need to see about that? What's my learning about that? You know, I can sit around beating myself up for it and just like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot, blah, blah, you know, and be really hard on myself. But then it's just wasting time. But I can do that, right? That's a choice. I have free will. I can do that if I want to. But I can also go, okay, what am I still attached to? You know, I've been working on this behavior, not biting my fingernails for years and years and years. But why am I still doing it? There's still something in me. It's coming to the surface to be healed. So what is it that I can do to learn from this and figure out what it is that I'm attached to? So, you know, I'm putting this movie up, Defending Your Life, because it's a really cute movie, a very old movie with Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks, who still has hair in the picture, so you know how old that picture is. but it's a great, cute little movie about what happens between lives, and that we go and we look back in our lifetime and we evaluate ourselves, and we look at all the things that we did that were great and beautiful, and we look at all the things that we did that we do not feel so hot about, and we judge ourselves. And we are judging ourselves all the time. And I know you probably know that about yourself, but we are always evaluating ourselves and deeming things within us and our actions and behaviors, right or wrong, good or bad. We hold grudges against ourselves. Everything we do to other people, we do to ourselves way, way more, constantly. And sometimes that's really a good rule of thumb to remember that, okay, why am I so angry with this person? What are they doing that I'm judging so harshly? Like I shared last week about the young woman I went to college with and was so angry about. And then later, years later, I learned, because I wasn't satisfied until I figured out why she had bothered me so much. And I finally, years later, learned that it was because she was acting out behavior that I would have been horrified to behave like. But because of that reaction in me that she was representing, I was holding myself back in so many ways of being myself and being able to share what I have to share, because I was so worried about being like her and being so into herself and all about herself or whatever. And once I was able to recognize, oh, that's why I was so angry with her. That's why I could not stand her, was because I was so afraid of becoming like her. And then I was able to let it go. And now it's a great example of how that process and that dynamic can work in our minds. So we are we are in a constant state of judgment city in our heads about ourselves. So we can use these same processes to forgive ourselves and have the compassion for ourselves that we have for somebody else. And wherever we go, there we are. So we get really tired of ourselves and our repetitive behaviors that we want to change and grow from. So that familiarity makes it very hard to forgive ourselves sometimes, because we feel like we should know better. We should know by now. And it's not over until we get the lesson from it. So if we can forgive the mistake and get the lesson, and just get to the lesson and forget about the beating ourselves up over it, or holding that grudge against ourselves, or getting so down on ourselves because we haven't learned by now, then we can get to the lesson and move forward. Oh yeah, now I don't have to do it anymore because I get it. Children, young children, preschool age and younger, from later toddler to preschool, really preschool age to maybe 5 or 6, often want to read the same book over and over and over again, or watch the same movie over and over and over again, because they're trying to get the message from it. It's like they don't quite totally understand the whole concept, so they want to keep reading the book over and over again. And once they get it, they don't, maybe they'll want to revisit the book just for fun, but they got the lesson from it and they're done with it. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So we're going to keep reading the same story and living the same story over and over again until we get the lesson that we need to, and we're ready to let it go. And there's no mistake, not ours, and honestly not anybody else's, that is too big to learn from, grow, and leave our guilt behind. Or if we're thinking about somebody else, to leave behind the emotional energy we're holding about somebody else, that we don't really have to be carrying. Everybody learns and grows. All right. Highly recommend that movie, by the way. All right. So how on earth do we forgive? I'm going to check in with the chat. I see some things popping up here. All right. So it's really about releasing what you feel and accepting it as it is. Exactly. That's exactly what it about. It makes me think of forgiveness in a little less highfalutin way, more like a clearing of negativity than something like involves some kind of transgression, more applicable to general things. So it also seems more like something I'm doing for me and not for that other person or situation or thing. And that is so true. And everybody benefits from forgiveness. Everybody benefits from forgiveness because, I wish I could think of a quick example off the top of my head. But when, let's say we had some kind of experience. I will give you a very silly example. So my ex-husband was a minister, and we were on our way to a weekend away for our anniversary one year. And he got a phone call from work. And I was so looking forward to just time together because we had kids and it was just busy. And he just felt like he needed us to stop by the hospital and visit this person. And it was a serious situation. But my reaction was I was so mad. I stayed in the car while he went in and visited in the hospital. And I just sat there and I just have to forgive. I just have to forgive. I have to forgive. I had steam coming out of my ears. I have to forgive. I have to forgive. I have to forgive. I have to forgive. And by the time he got back to the car, I was fine. And we had a great weekend. But years later, that person who was in the hospital came up to me and was so grateful that he was able to take time and spend and get prayed with, and he felt so much blessing from that time. And if I had not done my work, I would have been resentful of this poor guy who was in the hospital. That's probably shows me in a really bad light, but I don't care because it was hard. It was really hard to do. And it was about me and my attachments and how I wanted things to look. And so yeah, it benefited me, but it benefited so many other people. And then when he would tell that story, my ex-husband would tell that story on Sunday mornings, I really kind of looked like this good guy because I was so kind and generous to like let him have that time to go visit somebody in the hospital. So, oh my gosh, it was a great story. But anyway, very silly. Probably has nothing to, anyway, I'm embarrassed now. Anyway, but it does, it helps us. I mean, that helped me, but it was helping a lot of people at that time. Or, if somebody is in your life and there's a forgiveness need there and you forgive them and maybe they leave your life for a while, but if they come back, there's a whole new setup that can happen. There's a whole new dynamic that can go in place with the relationship, that it's helping the other person too. I mean, and I will be honest with you, there's a lot of things like reincarnation and karma I would love to go in with you, but I don't want to lose some people out there. But I just want to throw that out there because there's an even bigger picture that if we understand it, then we understand even more why that forgiveness is so important. All right, so let's see. Yeah, you can't let it go until you realize what the mistake is and can forgive yourself for it, forgive yourself for whatever it is you've done or causes you to feel anger for or about yourself or that other person. And you have to realize it and understand what it is about. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So there's a person, somebody's sharing, there's a person I talk to a couple of times a year, and I tried calling and texting that person and never heard back. I carried this for several months. I must not be important, or I must be a pest, and something that we talked about last week helps so much. We said most of the time that we feel a certain way, it isn't the current dilemma. It's about something that's happened before. It's those soul patterns, those lifetime patterns that we've carried that are if we're reacting to it big, then it's, maybe 25% of it is coming from the situation at hand today, but 75% of that is coming from somewhere else when our reaction is so big. And she says, I'm so grateful that I don't have to do the negative self-talk for this incident. That's wonderful. Good. Love all my examples. Thank you. Thanks for that moral support. It's helpful when you share experiences from your past, you work through them. Okay. Well, thank you. So anyway, I've got lots of those, as a matter of fact. I was, I can be pretty squirrely when I want to be. All right. So thank you for sharing. So how on earth do we forgive? I'm going to share 3 processes that really all do the same thing. When I approach forgiveness for myself, when I'm working with somebody who's working on forgiveness, it's about honoring our own experience of the situation. It's about really doing a sincere look at what is this hitting in me? Is it hitting something about myself? Is it, am I so angry with this other person that I want to hold on to this? Am I not ready to forgive? Do I need my anger to help me hold this person accountable for their behavior? And sometimes that's the case, right? But we don't have to let that anger poison us. We can use that energy. That's a higher order of anger. Like a common example is Jesus overturning the tables in the temple. We can say, well, yeah, Jesus had an anger problem, or we can see that he was making a point and he was using that, what we label as anger, but he was using that strong energy to make a point and to break up some thought forms that were some behaviors that were not appropriate. He was making a point. So, so we look at our emotions around it, and then we work with those until we're ready to let it go. And again, it can take time, and we can let it go 50 times before we're finally complete with the process. And that's okay. That is absolutely okay, because we're learning and growing and moving, and we do what we got to do, because that's the most important thing. So journaling is inescapable when we're working any kind of forgiveness process, because what happens if we try to do it in our heads, our brains are 1 part logic and 5 parts emotion and body sense. And that is not a scientific number, but it's a very close metaphor for how our emotions run our thinking. And so if we try to do our forgiveness or any kind of processing in our heads, not that we can't ever do it, sometimes it works just fine, but when it comes to those more emotional things, it's like we're a sponge trying to get the water out of us, but we keep soaking it up. The emotions will drag us over here. It's like, yeah, I think forgiveness is a good idea. It's so spiritual and meaningful. And there's, 5 posts on Instagram every day about forgiveness, so it must be important. 1 minute. And then on the next minute, it's, oh my gosh, I just want to strangle that person. I can't believe this. I feel so victimized. I feel so angry. I want to scream. And then that wave passes, and then we go back to the other side. Okay, I feel better. I'm in my Zen zone. And then something will happen. We'll see the name of that person, or we'll see their face, or we'll hear something that smells of that person, and then we'll be back right again on the other side. So, so writing it out helps us maintain our perspective. Even if we're journaling emotionally, we're letting it out, we're putting it on paper. And so because we're putting it on paper, there's a part of our brain outside of our emotional brains that is engaged. We pull a little bit of ourselves into our rational mind, into our intellect part of our brain, which is kind of works as an anchor from the waves of emotion that are beating us around. So I highly recommend it. If you can text fast as your emotions come, feel free to text your process. If you are a typer, go ahead and type it out. I'm a writer because typing keeps me in my head too much. And I love the visceral expression of energy that writing with pen and paper gives me. So I highly recommend writing with old-fashioned pen and paper, but it's going to work. You know, again, whatever effort we put into our forgiveness process is never lost. It is always moving us forward. So the first process that I'm going to talk about tonight is writing a letter to the person or about the situation that you need to forgive. So, dear so-and-so, I want to tell you what you did affected me. And this is the step one, acceptance, right? Dealing with the facts of the situation. Here is what my experience is. I'm going to write it down. And while I'm writing it down, I'm validating my own experience of it. And I don't need anybody else to do that. I want, probably while I'm writing, I want somebody else to validate my experience. But eventually, as I move through that, I'm doing that for myself. And then I don't need somebody else to do that for me. So that's the first part. And then writing to be able to look at all perspectives. Let me step in the other person's shoes. Even if that grosses me out to think about stepping in their shoes. Let me just try to look at it from their perspective, even at a distance. Maybe I don't step in their shoes. Maybe I just look inside their closet and look and just kind of see where they might have been coming from, and to be able to see the context of the situation. Okay, what was going on in the moment? Were we all stressed? Was it a high energy moment? Where was I in that time? Was my head somewhere else and I said something that triggered this person? Did I just walk into a minefield and I didn't know it? Like, what was going on in that situation? That's part of dealing with the facts, but it's also part of that compassion step of what's the bigger picture here? And then you write about it until you're ready to let it go. You write and you write and you write and you write. And I have an example of this. You know, as a therapist, there was a time when my oldest was a junior in high school, and all of a sudden I had this influx of juniors in high school coming into my office for support, and they were all dealing with the same thing. They were all dealing with the pressure of high school, and I had taken all these AP classes and honors classes and advanced classes, and then they had colleges coming at them from another direction saying you have to have a portfolio. You have to, not only do you have like 5 hours of homework after an 8-hour day of school, but we want you to be doing volunteer work, and we want you to be involved in school, and we want you to have this plethora of experience and workaholism, my editorial comment, by the time you get to college. And that's what we're looking for. And so I get these poor 17-year-olds who are brilliant and responsible, and to say that they were feeling anxious and depressed would be an understatement. I actually talked at that time to a person in a school, and they said, yeah, our mental health days have quadrupled in the last few years since we started offering more AP classes. And so anyway, okay, so I'm gonna pull myself back from my soapbox. So there's one day when I felt so angry about this and was totally taking it on way too much, and I was going to go, and I actually did end up writing a letter to the superintendent, and he was awesome. But before I did that, I had to find out what the heck was going on with me. So I took out my pencil and paper and I started writing to those blankety blank college admissions people, and just told them in my journal what I thought of them, what I thought they were doing with them, how I thought they should take their 8-hour workday and add eight more hours before they can even go to sleep of things that they have to do without socializing with their families or their friends or anything, and see how they feel by the end of a week, and just do that for a week and see if anything changes. And I was writing and I was writing and writing and writing and writing, and I wrote for 3 pages of rant. I ranted. I wrote my rant for 3 pages, and by the time I got to like the bottom half of the 3rd page, I just heard this voice. I had this feeling of, well, there are a couple of things. One is like, is this really yours to do? Have you come onto this planet to take on college admissions programs and offices and high school advisory offices? Is that really what you're here to do? Okay, so that was good information. And the other thing was, how do you know this isn't serving these souls right now? How do you know? Like, who are you to know that their hard work isn't the biggest challenge for them right now, but also the biggest blessing? I know for my oldest, it helped to give them perspective on how much do I have to please and live up to what people are asking me, and how much do I feel okay with? And it helped them define who they are, what was important to them. So in that way, it was a blessing. And so that, because I was willing to kind of rant until it ran out of steam, obviously I still have feelings about it, but I don't have, trust me, I do not have the feelings I had about it before, but I had to let it run out of steam in order to get to that place where I was willing for another answer to come through. I was willing that my way wasn't the only way to hold this situation. And I have down here too, forgiveness is just a platitude or an intellectual concept, and I'm going to talk more about this, until we feel it in the body, through the body, all the hurt, anger, fear, sadness, grief, whatever is involved in the situation that we're carrying, so that those emotions can be released. Because until they're released, let me back up, because that's too black and white to say until they're released we won't find out the lesson, because that's not always true. But part of being open to the lesson is being willing to let go of our grip on those emotions a little bit. And then we can step back. Even if we're still feeling it, we have a little bit of breathing room for a different perspective to come through. So let me talk a little bit more about this, but I see that people are saying things, so let's take a look. I struggle with feeling that anger is useful and even feels good sometimes. Yes, intellectually I can see that can get me in trouble, but it is hard to let go. So yeah, there's definitely different qualities of anger, right? There's anger that we can get stuck in and just lash out at people. And then there's anger that is saying enough of this. When we're dealing even with a personal quality, like I did this morning, I was journaling about a quality within myself this morning, and I had to get angry with the quality because it was getting in the way of me being able to see the truth of something. And so that kind of anger, where it's that if I say Shiva energy, I don't know if people will understand what that is, but Shiva is the one of the Hindu gods that is the destroyer. And there's the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer. And Shiva is the destroyer. And it's the process of creation, which includes destruction. And if we're not able to destroy something, then nothing can grow. It's like the natural fires that take place that clears the land for new growth. So that is the anger the quality of anger, and let's just call it energy. It's the quality of energy that moves things, that gets things out of the way, that you know, having a trait that we don't like about ourselves. To be able to get angry with that is an energy that can break up that those neural connections around that behavior to help us let it go. So yeah, and I grew up not thinking anger was okay too, and not knowing how to hold that, and being able to see that differently now, but after a long time of dealing with that same thing. Then somebody's asking, how can you deal with a sister who the last time she barely talked to me was on my father's funeral luncheon 9 years ago? Okay. So this is about a family relationship. I mean, the thing that I would recommend is to journal about it and to write about it, and write her a letter and tell her all the things that you're feeling, all the things, and a letter you don't send, let me clarify, a letter that you don't send, but let your intention be, what am I holding on to? What do I need to learn about myself? And what am I holding on to? And what good does it do me to hold on to this? And what, and we're getting to the 7 steps, of course, soon too. And there's that hopes and dreams step, that step of expectations. What am I expecting from her that she obviously is not able to give to me? And how can I let go of that expectation so I can love her just the way she is, even if it's from a distance, even if she never talks to me again? And how sad would that be? Then that's a grieving process, right? Which is also a 7 steps process. But that, that I'm okay, and I can love her from a distance, with or without her approval. But that takes a lot of processing to get to that, and keep going with it, keep working with it. And I'm just reading comments here. Okay, so yeah, forgiveness. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it isn't. But there's a place for overt, open, anger emotion. Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when validation has been withheld externally. I don't think it's enough to get my validation that the culture has toxic elements, just from myself, my own validation. There needs to be something more open for us to begin to deal with some of these social and moral ills. Absolutely, absolutely. And that anger that goes on is, there's a percentage of it, right, that is right and just and can help move things in the world, and that's part of it too. I mean, there are just wars. There are, we're human beings, and we live in a very limited and confined understanding of any kind of bigger plan. So ultimately, we're all doing the best that we can, and at a level of, from a level of or perspective of movement, there are times to absolutely stand up and say something. We all probably have had relatives that we've had to stand up to or avoid, or confront, and that's right. That's the right thing to do. But there's not a black and white rule about that. And here's the difference, and here's why forgiveness is so important. Our emotions will cloud our good judgment if we are coming from our trapped pain. we can have that higher order of anger that comes out and gets things done, but it would be from a place where we know what needs to be done. And it's way more efficient, it's way more focused, and it's way more effective than our trapped emotional pain and the anger that comes from that. So anyway, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit more. So feeling helps your healing. This goes again to writing things out and letting those emotions come through. I put this spiritual thermometer up again because I've mentioned it a few times in the last several weeks and haven't had it on our PowerPoint, so I wanted to bring it up again. So below that 5 line on that spiritual thermometer is our neutral state. Everything below a 5 is our emotion, our emotional state, our limited self. We're stuck in our emotions, drama, fear, danger, where our rational mind is flooded by our emotional brain chemistry, and our thinking is clouding our judgment. Our thinking is clouded. So part of that healing process of forgiveness is letting those feelings out. That's why writing is so good, because all of those feelings get a voice and they get expressed, because they're circulating in there anyways, electrical energy. So if we can write it out and get it out, even writing is better than talking to somebody. And I'm a therapist, so I'm all for people talking to somebody, but writing is even better because it's an expression of it. It's an expression that engages all the parts of the brain and body that need to be engaged in that moment. And this picture on the other side, I really like. I found this on a site where somebody was talking about somatic experiencing and Stephen Porges' work. But when we have trapped emotions, we go, in this picture, we go a couple of different directions. One is hyper-vigilance, where, okay, I'm never going to let that person hurt me again. And so we always have to be on the alert for, or I'm never going to let that person of that race hurt me again, or I'm never going to let that person from that political party hurt me again, or I'm never going to, and so then we have to be, that anger is making us hyper vigilant. Okay, I have to do this, I have to do this. And then we're jumpy and we're skittish and all of that. Or another response is, I was so hurt by that, I can't even deal with it. So I'm just going to back out. I'm not going to watch the news. I'm not going to look at what's going on. I'm not going to feel any emotions in my body. I'm just going to say, everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm just going to live my happy little life in my happy little world. I'm not going to deal with any of it. And so both of those are pulling us away from our bodies. They're pulling away from our feelings, and they're pulling us away from our healing. So that felt sense in that other colorful picture is being in the body. I'm feeling angry right now, and I'm going to let myself feel angry. And I can feel it in my body from the top of my head to the tips of my toes, and it's okay. And I want to use this to help me be on the right track for my whole self all the time. And if I'm on the right track for my whole self all the time, I'm on the right track for everybody else too. And that's just a given, because then I'm coming from my Zen zone, my aligned place within myself. And so whatever action I take from that place is right action. But we have to allow ourselves to feel it, and not just, there's a phrase that kind of came out in the last few years called spiritual bypass, where, we go to either, we go to that place of like, oh, well, I'm just so spiritual that I don't need to forgive. I love it in classes when I have somebody who says, yeah, I don't feel like I have anybody to forgive. Like, do you still have a pulse? Or then you probably have somebody to forgive, even if it's yourself. Let's kind of look at that more deeply and see. And not that we can't feel at peace, not that we can't feel good and loving in the world, but but forgiveness is part of our growth. It's part of our learning. It's, if we want to move ourselves to the next level, there's that release process. And sometimes we have to forgive ourselves for hanging on to our old self and not letting ourselves move forward or whatever. So there's always that need for us as humans. Okay. Oops. No, I didn't mean to do that. I pushed the wrong button. Hang on there. We'll go back here. All right, here we go. Okay, I meant to push that other button. Where'd you go? There we go. All right. Writing also embeds it into the brain more than just thinking about it. Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, social injustice definitely is hard to forgive. It's hard to, one thing I was thinking about when earlier today, when I was thinking about our time together tonight, was when I was in college, I was definitely a social justice warrior, and there was not a phrase for that at that time. So I, stuck with pain in the butt, and I was okay with that. But what I realized one day, like, I was feeling so angry with bigoted people. I had this experience where I was a resident assistant in the residence halls, and we were having our house party one night, and I saw coming up in the elevator. The elevators were closed off because the party was on the floor, and the elevator came to our floor, and these doors opened, and I saw this guy who looked like he probably was in some kind of military. He wasn't dressed like that, but he just had that demeanor, the short haircut and all of that. And he looked, and a friend of mine was standing next to me. His name was Ahmad, and he was next to me. And so I saw this white guy look at my friend Ahmad with this glare, and I thought, uh-oh, this is not good. So I just kind of made a note of it, and then he had to come up the stairs or however they got there. And he came and he pushed Ahmad into the wall and hurt him. And it was, and so there's a lot of processing I had to do around that, right? So first of all, I stepped in and whatever, but he was, charges were pressed against him, and he pled guilty. So I was subpoenaed, but I didn't have to go to court anyway. But all of this, so it was a big deal. And so as it took me time to process it. First, I was upset. In the moment, I was great, but then my processing comes later. So I was upset about it. So there was a lot of tears, and then there was just anger towards this guy. Like, how dare you touch another human being like that, ever? And and so I was kind of working with my anger and felt really justified, and which in a certain sense I was, right? But it was poisoning me. It was too much. So as I was working on it, I just heard this. I didn't really hear a voice. It was more like a realization. It's like, I am bigoted against bigoted people, and I don't like them. I think they should rot, and that isn't going to help anything. It's not a bad perspective. If I take the first 30% of that, it's a really awesome perspective to have, but the rest of it is just going to fuel that anger and fear in the world, right? So this is why we do our forgiveness work, so that we can have the right amount of anger to make things happen and to heal things in the world and in ourselves, but not so much that we're falling over ourselves and getting in our own way when we want to do something that is good and just. All right. Forgiving is a passageway to freedom, to freeing myself and the others from, yeah. So when we forgive ourselves and when we can hold ourselves in that peace of mind, in that discernment, in that clear think above a 5, then we're able to help other people. We're able to be patient enough for other people to rise to that level also and above their 5. But if we're reacting, then we're in the mud below a 5, wrestling with pigs who love that. They say, never wrestle with a pig because you just get muddy and the pig likes it. So, everybody likes, when we're below a 5, when human beings are below a 5, I should say, when human beings are below a 5, they want company. And our emotional maturity responsibility is to not do that. That's being emotionally mature, not being allowed to get sucked into that below a 5. And when we do, which we will, because that's part of our healing process, when we do, it's our soul saying, hey, here's some unhealed material, and it's time to work with this and find out what you need to do to heal. All right. 500 works too, whatever. Okay. So let's move on. So this is one I like too, just because I have a friend who shared with me, actually I heard it kind of secondhand, about an experience. So, in Christian history, Jesus said, was asked, how many times do we have to forgive? Don't you ever feel that way? It's like, oh my God, how many times do I have to forgive? And what Jesus said was 70 times 7. I imagine it was an arbitrary number, that he was just trying to make a point that you just do it until it's done. But I had a friend who was on her way to, I think her brother's wedding or something, and she and her mom had a falling out, and she knew she was going to see her mom at this wedding. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know, should I go? But she had a long drive. So while she was driving, she took pen and paper. It's a boring stretch of road, so it was fine. I'm not recommending that, but this is just what she did. And she took a pen and paper and she wrote, I forgive you, Mom. I forgive you, Mom. I forgive you, Mom. 490 times. And she counted 490 times. And by the time she got to the wedding, she felt this shift happen in her. Like all of a sudden it was like, she went from all that emotional pain that she was feeling of all the things that she was holding. And she felt this shift and this like kind of sweeping energy breeze move through her. And she wasn't holding that anymore. And she was able to go to the wedding and enjoy her mom. And they actually became really, really close friends again after that. So, but here again, it's like she wasn't denying her own experience. She was writing, and she was willing, that intention and that drive was there to do it until it's done. And that's the kind of drive we have to have in order for that healing to take place. Is I want this out of me, and I'll do whatever it takes without sacrificing my own integrity. But even if nobody else in the world knows that I'm doing this, I have to do it. And that is part of that dealing with reality and validating our own experience, but also having that release, that willingness to make our new story our reality rather than our emotional pain. So that was another good tool. And then of course the 7 steps. So we talked about the 7 steps for 3 weeks in a row. It was awesome. And we're talking about the 7 steps as a way to release something in our lives, we were working with releasing our pre-pandemic life because it's changed so much and we don't know what's coming, but we want to be clear and we want to be free to be open and receptive to the next thing that is coming. Well, the 7 steps is also the best forgiveness process I've ever used. And I've used the letter writing one too, and I don't mind that one at all. But I like the 7 steps because when I've got a forgiveness need, I'm feeling my emotions deeply. And those 7 steps help me organize kind of what I'm thinking, what I'm going through, and it helps me just have some kind of order to my process. So again, each step on the 7 steps addresses an area of the situation to be released. What am I grateful for this person or situation or myself that I need to release right now? What am I grateful for? Even if there have been times when I'm using the 7 steps as a forgiveness process, where the only thing I could come up with that I was grateful for is the opportunity to journal this out. And that's all I could come up with. And that's okay. And my good time was, oh boy, isn't this great that I get to journal this out and that I'm willing to do it in the first place? That is wonderful. And then that's all I wrote for those 2 steps. So let us not feel confined by gratitude and good times when we're doing our forgiveness work. Even if we have to skip them all together and just work steps 3 to 7, awesome. That's great. Because who cares? Maybe you have somebody in your life you have to forgive. You've never had a good time, or you're not grateful for anything that you can think of. But you will, by the time your forgiveness process, I'm not saying by the time the 7 steps process, I'm saying by the time your forgiveness process has been completed, you will be so grateful that you did the work. You will be so grateful for the freedom and empowerment that you feel that you can go back and add that at the end. So the person or situation that we're needing to forgive is the subject matter. So it could be ourselves. I forgive myself for, usually when I'm working on something around forgiving myself, I pinpoint what it is that I'm needing to forgive myself for. And that's the thing that I'm using as the subject matter for the 7 steps. So, so I'm forgiving myself for that thing that I did when I was in 2nd grade that I still wince about and feel guilty about. And so it's that situation that I'm releasing. Or it's, biting my fingernails. Okay, so I'm releasing the behavior of biting my fingernails, or a character trait or something that, what is it that you need to forgive yourself for? And use that as your focal point. I love the questions on the 5th step of forgiveness. And I will make sure I email this to you or get it to you. I'll put it in the email with a recording that goes out. I'll put all the whole 7-step process and the link for it on Jane Elizabeth's website, Center for Enlightenment. The questions of the 5th step ask, what is the hardest thing to forgive regarding this person or situation? Or myself, of course, which is a person, I guess. What is the hardest thing to forgive? Don't worry about all the little things. Just go for the gusto. Go for the big frog. What is the hardest thing to forgive? And look at that. And then I love how we don't spend on the step a lot of time on that hardest thing to forgive. The next question is, how will my lack of forgiveness affect my life in the future? And just to stop and think about that. How will my lack of forgiveness affect my life in the future? What would I get? What would I possibly get for not forgiving? Because that's our choice, right? We have forgiveness needs, but we also can choose not to do them. So how will that affect me? Oh, great. Then I get to carry around this whole baggage around college admissions programs and take away the focus from my family and my practice and the things that I know of and the things that I'm good at and the things that I'm here to really help people with. And I can go focus on that and waste my time and probably not be very effective in the process. Awesome. Okay, that's a reason not to forgive, right? What's causing you not to forgive? What is causing you not to forgive? That's a beautiful self-reflection that takes that compassion step more deeply. This is the question that asks, what am I bringing to the table? What am I bringing to the table? Why am I not forgiving? What is this person representing in me that I'm scared of or that I don't like very much? What is this person representing in my history? Maybe it's another person that I haven't forgiven yet. Oh, okay. Well, if I forgive this person, then I have to forgive that person. And I don't want to forgive that person. Oh, great. Let's stop this 7-step process and go to that person because that's where all the energy is coming from. And then how will your life improve if you do forgive? And this is kind of the breath of fresh air step of, oh, okay, so if I do forgive, that'd be so much better. I can let this go. I can not be triggered all the time by this person or situation. I can forgive myself. I can be gentler with myself. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? We can do that. So I really wanted to highlight the questions in that step. All right. Any questions about forgiveness? This is definitely a topic that took longer than I anticipated for us. So my 1 week has gone to 2 weeks, and I've already kept you over. So anyway. So I do want to do just a little bit of meditation with you. You can always email me with questions as well, chicagobrainspotting@gmail.com. You can just reply to any of the emails that you received for our time, and that will come directly to me too. So, all right. So I'd love for you to think about a person or situation that you feel you need to forgive. What is that? Who is that? Kind of feel, as you hold this person or situation in mind, kind of feel what body sensations show up around it. And if you want to measure on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 meaning no bother, and 10 meaning most horrible bother ever, how strong are those sensations? How intensely are you feeling this forgiveness need? Just notice where the sensations are in your body. Notice with compassion. We don't have to be afraid of our body sensations. They are messages. They're avenues of self-awareness. Just have in mind, if it's not there already, the circumstances around this forgiveness need. And I'd love to do a meditation where we're doing the full 7 steps, but I'm going to send you that link because it's lengthy and I want to honor our time. And I do encourage you to check it out when I send the link. But for right now, we're just going to hold that and notice the inner turmoil that this forgiveness need is causing the person or situation. Notice that physical energy that maintains it. Just notice how juicy those sensations are for journaling. Just imagine all the beautiful insights and understandings and release that would come from writing about this. Sometimes people are afraid to write or explore those physical sensations that, those situations that cause those visceral reactions because their bodies are erroneously telling them that there's something to be afraid of, but they're just coming up to be discovered. And the discovery is usually freedom, clarity on an issue, the insight that it's okay to let it go, or some important action step to take, but can now be taken from clarity and strength rather than fear or anger. Just notice the content of these feelings and maybe images or thoughts. Notice the content. And I don't want to leave you in the midst of this for tonight. So just notice what journaling needs to be done, what work needs to be done. And then picture it slowly dissolving, like soap bubbles coming off of you. Knowing that it's not over till the lesson has been embraced. For right now, we can let it go. We know what our work is. Right now, we can commit to our own hearts that we will forgive. We will give ourselves the gift of that freedom. We will give those around us that gift of our own clarity and light. Feel that love in your heart for you. You don't have to feel love for anybody else right now. Just feel that for yourself right now. That love in the center of your heart that inspires you to heal and move and grow and learn and let go and grow some more. Let yourself take some deep belly breaths. Breathing in, letting your abdomen expand. And breathing out, feeling it pull towards your spine. When we commit to ourselves, to our own healing, to a forgiveness process that we need to do, that commitment gives us the energy and the motivation and the foresight to do that work. We almost get a taste of the freedom that will come when we're on the other side of it. So feel that right now. Feel yourself already free and what that would be like, and feel the clarity, whatever you can tap into now of what it's like on the other side, that forgiveness process. Just drink in the taste of that. Let it become the carrot on the stick. And feel the gratitude. Gratitude for understanding the importance, the tools, purpose, the blessings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And take another deep breath. Bringing forward with us our marching orders, our work that's to be done. We come back to our chairs in our own space, feet on the floor, feeling the body, the air around us. And our work now begins. We have the means to do it, the tools and the motivation, right? You can check back in with that carrot on the stick. If you feel like, oh my gosh, this is so not worth it, that you can do it. Have a wonderful week. Right now, for next week, I'm thinking we're going to but kind of discuss mindfulness and what that means and how that can show up. It's a great time in the middle of this pandemic to learn what mindfulness is more and how we can incorporate that. So we'll unless something comes up between now and then that feels more pertinent, that's the plan for tonight, for next week. So have a wonderful week, and enjoy the beautiful weather. I hope you get to be outside a whole lot, and many blessings to each of you. Take care. Bye-bye.